22 часа 28 минут. Масса...
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Dragon deploy verified.
Welcome to Spacevidcast, episode 516 for Saturday, October 20th, 2012. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is the beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented Carrie Ann Higginbotham. We'll be your hosts, as always. Let's go ahead and get started. There's a bunch of really awesome space news. I think we should start first with, I didn't build any of
That's hilarious.
the graphics. So
good job.
All right, so
Here's this random picture.
Here's a random picture for
Super
you.
random picture.
I guess normally we build graphics with lower thirds that have, and I didn't do it last week either. So for the link to the story, go to wiki.spacevidcast.com. And the direct one is going to be /en/5.16. That'll bring you straight to this show. And we're finding shiny objects on Mars. This is the first object that Curiosity rover found. Mm-hmm. And the next thing, and we thought, okay, well, oopsies, part of the rover fell off. Right. That's no good. Then we found that, which is a random black arrow on Mars. I don't know what's...
Yeah, that was really weird, that arrow.
But you can see there's some more shiny stuff there. We've actually found a third shiny object on Mars as well.
Yeah, and part of the issue was that, again, we thought this was ourselves, essentially, and we did a little actual digging, not
Pun intended.
No, well, but we did some digging and then found more shiny
underneath
after we dug the hole and looked at ourselves and we're like, well, we didn't come apart, so it is not us. What is going on? So the first object probably we determined was us, but the more shiny we kept finding, the weirder it got.
I think they've actually, as I understand it, the first object we're going back and reanalyzing, going maybe that wasn't us.
Ah, copy that. Interesting.
But the new shiny is not us.
Right.
The new shiny is something on Mars, and we're like shiny.
Of course.
So it's just interesting. We found more shiny. That is the highly technical term.
That is a technical term. Yeah.
More shiny on Mars, and so Curiosity is going to dig and explore, and this is why we go there and do this stuff. We're unexpected. How awesome is that?
It's very awesome.
So continue watching the news. We'll figure out what the shiny is. I think we'll figure out if that first object really is part of Curiosity that fell off, or if it's just Martian shiny.
Right, like native Martian shiny.
MartianShiny.com. That will be a website.
Be a Tumblr.
Other things that we have found. It better be a Tumblr. Other things that we have found actually Europe. Oh man, I was going to say ESA, but it's not ESA.
No.
It is the European. I forgot. Anyhow, they have found an Earth-sized planet, approximately the same mass as Earth, in the Alpha Centauri system, which is very, very close. It's like in our neighborhood. It's only a few light years away. I want to say it's like
4.3?
I was going to say 4.5, but yeah, 4.3 sounds about right. Light years away from Earth. And actually, this is an interesting picture. This is an artist representation of it. You can see Alpha Centauri. Well, you know what? Hang on. I've got another graphic right here. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see Alpha Centauri A, that sun sitting in the lower left. Alpha Centauri B. But then you can see our sun in the picture. Our sun is actually bright enough. If you were standing on this Earth-like planet, you might be able to see it. It is a Goldilocks planet, as ArcDude has said in the chat room. But more to the point, there's actually this really amazing, if you go to that, again, that wiki that we were talking about, wiki.spacevidcast.com, and go into the discussion area for this particular post.
Wait. If I may back up just a quick second.
Yeah.
It's kind of a Goldilocks planet in that it's 1,200 degrees Celsius or 2,192 degrees Fahrenheit.
I thought it was a true Goldilocks, but clearly that is not.
It's a little warm for us to be there.
Yeah, that's not going to work for us.
It's
It's not quite a Goldilocks.
But
yeah,
the
no, it's not a Goldilocks
big deal is
planet.
that as the wiki statement as you're about to read kind of points out is that it's a rare occasion when you have a star and you have planets orbiting that star and it's just like one dude hanging out.
Now, I'm going to let you guys read the... I'll scan this graphic so you don't have to watch me read, but if you go to, again, wiki.spacevidcast.com, go to 5.16, go into discussion, and NeoSM posted, said, I wanted to point out why the discovery of an Earth-sized alien planet in the Alpha Centauri system means for astronomy. To put this into perspective, just how close this exoplanet is to us. If one were able to stand on the surface, you would see, again, we just determined you're not doing that.
Right.
You would see the exact same constellations in the same positions, looking exactly like they do when standing on the surface of Earth, such as the Big Dipper, Orion, Hunter, etc. I totally lost my place.
So it's kind of almost like a mirror image, but way hotter.
With new exoplanet discoveries found every week, 750 are currently confirmed via Kepler, with 2,300 additional awaiting confirmation. We know just how common planets and other stars are with what we have confirmed. 30% of the stars have planets around them, or give or take 10%. Half being rock. Basically, we have a boatload of planets, a boatload of stars, a lot more than we ever even imagined.
Right,
and we already imagined a lot.
And one of the points that he's making is that again, there usually isn't just one planet that's orbiting these stars. It's usually a few of them. So if we find one, the probability of us finding more than one is very good. And even though this guy's a little hot, kind of like Mercury and Venus are a little hot, it's possible that there could be another planet that is a little bit further out in that perfect Goldilocks zone. USKO in the chat room pointed out that it's the closest exoplanet ever found. It's a really comparable size to Earth, but again, it's a little bit warm for us. So go a little bit further out, it's possible that there's something else there. So it is really significant in a lot of different ways.
Or as Rocket 1017 said, Carl's right. Billions and billions. That's my best Carl Sagan.
That's a terrible Carl Sagan.
That's not a very good Carl
Okay,
Sagan.
good.
So that is exciting stuff. We don't normally do a whole lot of astronomy stuff on the show because I'll say things like in the Goldilocks zone when clearly it's not. I don't know what I was thinking
so
there.
Close to the Goldilocks zone.
Thank you for correcting me on that one, though. That would have been terrible to get out there.
2 points, Carrie Ann.
But yeah, it is important, and finding it just means that the chances of us finding other intelligent life, not just life, but intelligent life out there, increase dramatically. And whether we can visit them or not, that's another story, but at least,
It's a big deal.
Big deal. One story we didn't cover last week was with the Falcon 9 engine anomaly, there was a side effect with the secondary payload, the Orbcomm satellite.
Yeah, so Orbcomm has this awesome deal going on with SpaceX to put all of these satellites in orbit. And SpaceX is totally happy to do that, particularly as a second payload. The issue, though, is that, as you remember, there was the shutting down of one of the 9 engines shortly after launch, if you will. And because of that, it took slightly more fuel and oxygen for Falcon 9 to reach target orbit for Dragon. So for Dragon to be able to get up to the ISS, it had to burn a little bit longer, which means that the second payload kind of, how do I word this exactly? The secondary payload kind of got a bum rap to a certain extent. Because they were going to the ISS, NASA has these requirements that a restart for the upper stage can only occur if there's a very high probability. And when we said very high, this is NASA, right? So they're talking over 99% probability of fully completing the second burn. And while SpaceX has said that there was significant or sufficient fuel on board as well as liquid oxygen to do so, the probability looked like 95% of completing the second burn as opposed to 99%. And the reason that NASA has this in place is because they don't want the probability of the second payload or anything else coming too close to the ISS, injuring the ISS, bumping into it, etc., etc. So because they only had a 95% probability of getting to the correct orbit instead of a 99%, they basically weren't able to do it. Again, if they weren't going to the International Space Station, it wouldn't have been pretty much as big of an issue. And so because of that, because Orbcomm's satellite didn't get into the correct orbit, it then eventually 3 or 4 days later fell back down to Earth. The upside is, and there is an upside, is that Orbcomm has said that, it kind of sucks, and we're not exactly thrilled about it. However, they were able to do a number of tests to verify that the systems on board were working pretty well and pretty much as expected.
And this was a test satellite to begin with. This wasn't an actual...
Yeah, and there's a whole long list of them that I'm sure you guys know way more about it than I do. But the engineering teams from Orbcomm, Sierra Nevada Corporation, and Boeing made significant strides in testing various hardware components. Telemetry, I can never get that word right, and command capability was established. Several critical systems verifications were performed, etc., etc. Solar array communications, all of these different things. So they got the majority of the tests done that they wanted to do, just not for a really long time, if that makes any sense. So it's not all lost. It does kind of suck a little bit, but the main objective of the SpaceX flight was achieved, so that's super awesome for them. And Orbcomm really is just filing an insurance claim.
Sweet.
So it should be okay.
Last story before we go into break is kind of split into two parts. First, there is a meteor shower. I believe it's Orionid. It's Orionid. Hard to say. Meteor shower, that's going to be going on for those of you watching the live show. I believe that is tonight and tomorrow. Actually, it goes on through November, but this is like the peak best time to see. You'll get like potentially 30 different viewing opportunities per hour, I think it is. Or
something like that.
It's a lot. That seems like a really large number. Maybe it's per night. But more to the point, there was this over Northern California. This is a meteor, and you can see it from a couple different shots. There's one. Here's another. This is a meteor. It is based on the angle and speed, and they looked at it. This is not from the Orionid meteor shower. This is just a couple people got lucky and were able to see this particular meteor, and it made the news. It was big, bright, and awesome. So we thought that was kind of cool. That was up in the Bay Area, which is a common occurrence, right? So meteors will come into Earth's atmosphere all the time. You just have to be lucky enough to see one. And while I have seen shooting stars, I've never seen one quite that big before.
Some people said it had a green tail, which that was really cool to see.
Yeah, I wish I would have seen that one. That one just looked massive, huge, and kind of awesome. There is one other story. I'm just going to show you the graphic. Well, I'm not going to show you the graphic. I'm just going to tell you, go to, because now I have to show you, I suppose. So that was the graphic. Right, so now you gotta go, well,
wow,
what the heck
an arrow
was it?
in space.
An arrow and the space shuttle, right?
Arrows are popping up everywhere.
I'm
not sure I like it.
Someone found the arrow tool in Photoshop. So that was, again, go to our wiki. It's the How We Nearly Lost Discovery. And that's by Wayne Hale on his blog. And it talks about how after Space Shuttle Columbia, we had the foam impact that was the reason we lost Columbia and her crew. They had similar issues on the return to flight missions.
Return to flight, dude. Could you imagine?
Yep.
That's
crazy.
It's
a really great blog post. It was actually posted in April, but I just ran across it today, and I wanted to kind of point it out because I think it's a really good read. So hit up wiki.spacevidcast.com/en/5.16. We'll put that in the show notes for you, and you can head on over and read that blog post. So stay with us. When we come back, our main topic...
Oddly enough, not about space.
Where does space start? We'll be right back.
Hi, Bill Nye here, CEO of the Planetary Society, and we'd like you to write to the President of the United States concerning the budget for planetary science, for planetary exploration. As you may know, we've asked you to write to Congress and to the Office of Management and Budget and the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and our people in Washington have studied the situation. And the next step, the key step, is to write to the President himself. Now, even if you don't like the President, we'd like you to write to him because he's the guy that can make that last little bit, that last thing happen to make sure that the budget for planetary science gets restored. We're talking about missions to Mars and Europa. You know, scientists have gone back through the budget, they've reconfigured things so that they've come up with a plan to explore Mars that will be acceptable to everyone. But we have to push that last little bit. Our people on the inside tell us that what we've been doing, or what you've been doing, is working. But we need to do this last step, and that's where you come in. Please visit planetary.org/SOS for Save Our Science. You can either send it in electronically right from there as you see it, or you could modify it a little bit and send it in. But we really want you to act now so that it gets in before the end of the year, before the next fiscal year 2014 budget gets established. This is where you and I can make a big difference. Please take action. You and I can change the future. Thanks very much.
So in that last commercial break, we saw Bill Nye talking about SOS Save Our Science. He's with the Planetary Society now, and actually they're a fun little organization. Go over to planetary.org, and you can sign up to be a member of the Planetary Society. And as he mentioned, write the President of the United States. I would, certainly comes way more impact from U.S. citizens, but everyone should just write the President. Why not? What can it hurt, right? Can't hurt at all.
The nice thing is if you go to the website, I believe they actually have it all filled out for you. So
just
you don't
sign your name.
Pretty much. So you don't have to feel, if you want to add your own comments, you can. If you want to totally erase everything that they said, and that's fine too. But it is kind of nice that you don't have to think about it too much for some people. It's a little easier to get them to just sort of sign their name.
So let's move into our main topic. A huge news item this last week was Felix
Baumgartner.
I'm like Bauer socks.
Or Bauer socks.
That's not right. Felix's jump from near space. So I have to air quote near space. Now, first off, I want to just say 8 million views. Awesome. I think this started to get people excited about space again, even though it was nowhere near space. That's not to say that this wasn't extremely difficult to do and an awesome accomplishment.
And he broke a record.
He broke a couple records.
Yeah. That's
so
huge.
I don't want to minimize this, but I do want to clarify space, if I may, just for a moment. So here we've got a neat little infographic, and so you can see 40,000 feet. That's kind of where airliners are. 65,000 feet. If you're exposed to this, human blood would begin to boil. And Felix was at 128,100 feet. So pretty high up there. That's really high up there. But that is not really near space. As we can see, at 280,000 feet, over twice where he jumped. That's where meteors start to begin to burn. But let's zoom out just a little bit for a moment. At 525,000 feet, that's when we start to see some. And sorry, these are all done in feet, so you're gonna have use Google. You can do your conversion. But yeah, and if we zoom out even further, you can see way the heck up there. That's the International Space Station,
which is like 1.8 million feet. So
Yeah.
think of 128,000 anythings versus 1.8 million anythings of the same things.
Yeah.
And you can see how very, very far away from that other thing he was.
So we are crazy Americans. This is
the sort of, everyone can kind of basically agree for the most part that space, quote unquote, starts at 100 kilometers or 62 miles above sea level. Where he jumped from was half of that, about. give or take.
Yeah, so and it's a little bit sad that Red Bull decided to market this as the edge of space because it is not the edge of space. I think we should be clear on that. The other thing we should be clear on is, yes, we are a worldwide show, and we should probably not use feet as a unit of measurement, as USKO said. No, I know. That was my fault. It was my bad. It was actually less than half. Less than half of the agreed upon boundary of space. Now, there is actually an argument as to where space begins and ends.
There is, but the generally consensus thereof is about 100 km, 62 miles.
Right. Now, we can't show you the jump because Red Bull owns the copyright of that, and they will take down the video immediately if we show that.
And then you will never see the show
You will never see the show ever again. So we're not going to show the video. But I do recommend heading over to YouTube and watching it because it is freaking epic. We watched it live. We had a couple different streams going. We had,
Good thing too.
I know, right? We had a few on our computer watching the live right off of the official YouTube channel. And then we also were watching CNN, which was a colossally huge mistake.
Fail.
Epic fail on CNN's part.
Epic.
But we were sitting here at the edge of our seats going, oh my God, what's going to happen? This is truly awesome.
Awesome.
And so first off, our congratulations to Felix for having...
The entire team. They did an amazing job. And they did the really great thing that we keep complaining about with certain companies is they waited for it to be safe. Right? They had a target date. They tried on that target date. It wasn't quite right on that date. They tried a couple other times. It wasn't quite right on all of those other times. They really, really waited for it to be as safe as it possibly could be before he jumped. And I have to commend them for that. That was really awesome on their part.
I don't think we ever complain about that on other space agencies.
No, but we always want everything to be done now.
I suppose.
And it's never done now.
Absolutely. So huge congratulations there. We just thought it was a truly awesome accomplishment, and we always like it when humans try to strive to do something bigger, badder, and more awesome. Just because we're complaining about them saying edge of space doesn't mean that the accomplishment itself was
really
it was
amazing. It wasn't from space.
Really, really awesome. It just wasn't from the edge of space. It also was not faster than the speed of light. This is an actual screenshot from MSNBC, who seems to. This is why you should not fire your science teams. And by the way, had he gone faster than the speed of light, that would truly be an amazing accomplishment.
That would be incredible. Although
Yeah.
that whole screen would be black then.
Yeah. As USKO did point out, he did break the sound barrier in freefall, which is freaking awesome. And that can actually help test some next generation spacesuits. And when you consider that we're going to be sending a lot more space tourists up, Virgin Galactic, X-Corp, to name two companies that will be doing some of these suborbital flights, well, they are going to the boundary of space, and they are going to have an emergency system in case something goes wrong. And actually, Armadillo Aerospace, I should bring up really quickly, when we were down at the Northrop Grumman Lunar Lander Challenge, or whatever we decided to call it this week.
In 2008.
Yep. They were showing off like a domed-based system where you'd be able to fly up and then space jump, basically. And this could be used potentially as a spacesuit to help do that. Maybe not this spacesuit, but a next generation spacesuit.
But actual space, like crazy armadillo, people can only do.
Well, no, I think others could do it too. But yeah. So there was that. So yeah, I think that the technology and information we get out of this jump, just the data streaming back from what he was able to do, what his spacesuit was able to do. Consider he did go faster than sound, so he went more than Mach 1 in his free fall. That's kind of awesome.
Super awesome.
I sort of want to do that. At the same time, I don't. And I will say it was a little bit scary because we're watching it live on YouTube because CNN wasn't doing it live. And we saw him start to spin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a weird freak out moment. Now, keep in mind, neither one of us have ever jumped out of a plane or anything like that. So I think our naivete sort of also jumped in, and there was immediate of, oh, dear God, he's going to die! There was a little freak out moment there, but he recovered really well, which was awesome. And those kinds of techniques, I think, will help from here on out for anyone else who wants to break the next record, I suppose. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was a really, really cool thing. And there was a meme kind of going around saying, like, it's really too bad that there's a sports drink that has a better space program than the United States, which is not true in any way, shape, or form, because, I don't know, our rockets can go way, way faster and way higher than that. So, cool. It was cute for a second, but hopefully none of you believe that.
No, but I do think kudos to Red Bull. Outside of the marketing thing that aggravates me a little bit, kudos to them for spending the money to make something like this happen.
Totally.
And I hereby challenge Mountain Dew, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, Coke. You know, I know they're all part of
Good
the
luck
same
with your
company.
fun stuff on Earth, eh?
Exactly. It's time for you guys to go to space as well and sponsor some stuff. And if you'd like to sponsor this show, feel free. We're more than happy to not only do the show, but also help develop next generation technologies to go to space. So Coca-Cola, if you're listening, or Pepsi, if you want to one-up Coke, give us your money. All right. On that note, why don't we, unless there's anything else you wanted to touch on?
Wasn't Red Bull supposed to give you wings? Did he not have any that day? Sorry. I had to.
All right. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, viewer comments from last week's show. And I can say last week this time.
And y'all had a lot to say.
Y'all had a lot to say. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lines. Filled on some expectation. This girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking. She's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Her heat keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking. She's fire walking to be free.
We're dancing to music.
I thought you were supposed to.
I do. I like that music. It works with it.
I love that sound.
It works with that particular thing. So last week we talked about Endeavor's. Oh no,
Endeavour?
the Space Shuttle's final Endeavour.
Endeavour.
We had a bunch of different topics, and we had some great posts in our wiki. And actually, I'd like to call up a wiki post. We told you guys to go to the discussion area and have a conversation with you.
We forced you.
We forced you.
Do it.
And no one did. So now I'm going to force you by doing it directly in the show. So how's that?
There you go.
So USKO says, space is a stimulus. You know how every few years the economy goes into a nosedive and this inevitably leads to some sort of stimulus or another? How about we prepare for the next time by drawing up launch-ready projects, and when the money needs to be dumped into the economy, we use a mission to Mars as the bucket. Actually, I think that's a really good idea, and I think that deserves additional conversation, and that's why we brought it up into the show, and that was available in last week's wiki. And so hopefully you saw that, and you can comment on that. Actually, what do you think? First off, I don't think it dives every few years. I think it's on a, it ebbs and flows, if I may, but I don't want to say it nosedives every few years. It feels like it nosedives every few decades, which is a little bit different. Then on top of that, are we really willing to put that money aside and save it? That just doesn't seem like something that the U.S. would do, right? That doesn't seem like something that...
Particularly the U.S., like, instant gratification hungry, like... There's no delayed gratification.
I'm not saying we shouldn't.
America.
I'm just saying I'm not sure we would. So also from USKO, also in the wiki, just a thought. What if people what if projects started by a specific administration plus legislature had to be funded in full by that administration and leg, with the money placed in some sort of escrow? This could solve the problems space agencies have with large projects which take a decade or more to complete. And this goes back to the conversation we pretty consistently have of you need to get your project done in 10 years or less. Because you're going to have a presidential cycle that ends at maximum every 8 years, at minimum every 4 years.
And the new guy ain't gonna care about your old projects.
They're not, but if you're 8 years into if you're 8 years into a 10-year project and you've got an inspiring project like going to Mars and you're just about ready to go, it's going to be very difficult for that other president to actually cancel that project.
You've got some momentum at that point.
You do. You generally would have momentum at that point. Again, an interesting idea. Should we require that if, for example, President Bush had the next space policy. He came out, basically, he canceled the space shuttle. He said, no more space shuttle. We're going to go back to the moon, onto Mars, and beyond using Constellation.
And he made a really pretty patch.
And he made a
I mean,
really
he
pretty
didn't,
patch.
but
So President Bush came out with this program. Should he have then been forced to fund it to actually get, say, to the moon, right? Actually develop a goal saying this is where we're going and here's all the money necessary to make it go. But then what happens? What happens when the next president comes in and says, I don't care if you have the money, I'm canceling the program anyhow?
this does sort of feel like I had a babysitter for a while where we would go out to like a street fair or something like that, and I would find something that I really, really liked, and to totally trick me, she'd be like, no, it's cool. We have to walk back this way back to the car. We'll totally get it on the way back.
Yeah.
And the entire time I kept thinking, I'm totally going to get that toy. It's going to happen. Because I was promised. And we would never walk by that table again. I would never see that toy again. And I was continually disappointed. And that's exactly what this feels like. Get it now or don't do it at all.
All right. The next one, on future market growth, we've got it backwards. It's the big companies like United Launch Alliance that will get pushed out while the little guys thrive. Government programs may continue for national pride or military reasons, but SpaceX is already beating up... That's not what they said. You read that. I can't read anymore.
Apparently, SpaceX is already beating the field on price, and they're just getting warmed up. If they succeed in building reusable vehicles, it'll be game over for the big boys.
With a
boys
Z.
With a Z. The next few years will be very interesting.
So, yeah, I don't think that we're actually at a point where we can say that companies like SpaceX, Sierra Nevada, Orbital...
I think a lot of them are still proving themselves.
Yeah.
All the way around. And it will be a few years. Again, like I said, this is the thing where we want everything to be done now. We want it to be done yesterday. We want it to be, we're obviously big new space fans in general. So we want all of those companies to be the new frontier of everything. But we're still in the proving grounds. We're still figuring some of this stuff out. We being the new space companies as a whole. And it will be a number of years before anyone can really say, and it really won't be until hindsight, right? You can go back and say, actually, that was the turning point right there. We can predict the turning point all we flippin' want to, and Lord knows we have. But... But it really won't be until we're a little bit further along that somebody can turn back and say, yep, that really was the actual tipping point, turning point. That's when things really started to get rolling. And that's when, this happened or that happened or whatever else.
All
if
right.
I may.
As far as losing engines on the Falcon 9, this was the engine 1 anomaly.
Yes.
It depends on when the engine is lost. We were talking about the ability for Falcon 9 to still successfully make its primary payload to orbit.
Yep.
If this had happened only seconds after launch, the rocket would not have made it to orbit. As the vehicle ascends, the requirements on engines drops off to theoretically only one, if need be, before the first stage separates altogether. Right. So basically, basically saying, look, if you lose an engine 1 second after liftoff, that's way worse than losing an engine or whatever, 120 seconds.
Well, yeah, because getting from standstill to going, or versus I'm going, I just need to keep going, it's a completely different set of rules. It also depends on where you're going, where your payloads need to go, how many payloads you have on board, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the general idea.
So staying on the SpaceX topic, I'm a big SpaceX fanboy as much as the next guy. However, I think the failure to deliver the secondary payload of SpaceX's flight was newsworthy, even if it was arguably due to restrictions imposed by NASA. That was by Hairball 1975.
Very well said. The big deal here is that while there are some things that Ben and I will like to theorize and comment upon without having any sort of actual facts to back them up. Something like that you're right was very newsworthy. At the time of the show last week, there really wasn't enough for us to say with any actual accuracy as to why this, that, or the other thing happened.
Yeah.
And so stuff like that, we really want to make sure that we are trying to get you the most accurate information. versus us just going, gee, I don't know, I guess they're a bunch of buffoons doing stuff. Because that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't help you.
We are a bunch of buffoons doing stuff, though. I do want to point out, it's a very tricky position for us because while Spacevidcast is an entity unto its own and has nothing to do with SpaceX, I am employed full-time as my day job at SpaceX. And so I have to be very, very careful with what we say on SpaceX. You'll notice I don't take SpaceX stories. Carrie Ann talks about them exclusively. I also don't talk to her about SpaceX. So any story she talks about, she has to get that information on her own.
I also have to understand it before I can speak about it. I just want to be very clear about that as well.
We're also not a breaking news website. We don't come here and try to break news. We try to get people excited about space. And so because SpaceX has nothing to do with this show, and what I say has no bearing on SpaceX's stance on anything, it's very important for us to keep the two separate. And so if you're coming here to get inside scoop on SpaceX, this is the last place you should actually be coming to get the inside scoop on SpaceX, because we're just not going to talk about it.
As I've said before, follow Elon on Twitter.
Yeah, if you want the inside scoop on SpaceX, follow Elon on Twitter. And that is out of respect to SpaceX, because they do, they could very easily have said, look, you have to kill that show if you want to work here. But they didn't. So, again, we're not, although I work in my day job at SpaceX, this show has nothing to do with SpaceX, and so we're not going to cover those stories until such a time as official releases are out, and we can say with a level of certainty this is public information, and even then, that's all done by her and not by me. So that's why we don't do that. And in the chat room, there were people saying, talk about MCT. There was an article that was posted where Elon was quoted talking about a new project called
I'm pretty
MCT.
sure that this reporter caught Elon in the bathroom, because I don't think the article really is anything. It was just like, hey, I totally bumped into Elon and he said something about MCT, which was, and then he asked Elon what MCT meant, and Elon's like, I'm totally not going to talk about it. Sorry. And so then everyone's like, what does MCT mean? And I'm like, it's probably his newest DJ for the holiday party going on in December. There's no information on it. There's probably a good reason why there's no information on it, but there's no information on it.
And as such, we're just not going to talk about it.
Sorry.
There's no public information available on the project.
There's nothing to say.
You're not going to get that information.
Let's put it this way, you know as much as I do.
There you go. So there's that with SpaceX. Let's see here. What else?
It would be really awesome if that was the MC of the... Yo, I'm MCT.
So from Phantom Drums 917, I know storage fees are huge and all, but I wish we could have kept just one shuttle on the payroll for emergencies. Not sure I trust other countries for entry into the heavens for the time being.
There was somebody else, I believe it was on Reddit, who had a similar statement in the form of a question, which was, why didn't we just keep one of the shuttles attached to the ISS?
Very good questions, actually. I'll answer both of those. First off, the shuttle is not designed to stay in space for that long. Even with the station-to-shuttle transfer system for power, the shuttle really can't be attached to the station for, we'll call it, more than a month. You might be able to do a little bit more. There are things such as beta angle cutoffs, but more importantly, it's just not designed to be in space that long. It never was.
Fragile.
It's fragile.
Let's just say that.
So it's incapable of doing that without a complete and massive restructuring of how the shuttle itself works.
Well, and then somebody else also said, even if it could, if the structure was in such a way that it could, it's so big that it's starting to cut off your access to some of the other modules on the ISS itself. It just, in so many different ways, it doesn't make any sense to have the shuttle up there.
It's also a terrible vehicle to use as a lifeboat. And here's why. It is the most deadly space vehicle that they had attached to the space station. Yeah. It is not a safe vehicle at all. Any other vehicle is safer than the shuttle. So it doesn't make sense to use it as a lifeboat, even if you could. It doesn't make sense to leave it on the ground because, again, it's not a safe vehicle at all. And I think it's because we flew it for so many years that people say, oh, well, that's what we should continue to use, or maybe it's American pride. But the reality of it is we lost 2 of them. We lost 14 humans on these incredibly unsafe vehicles, and it was time for them to retire and go away. This was 60s and 70s technology flying around in space. We can do way better than that, and we are working on doing way better than that.
And we've even said that some of the companies that made some of the parts for the shuttle have long gone, disappeared, goodbye, don't have the parts anymore. You can only refurbish so many times. It's it just gets more and more dangerous as it goes along, which is really sad and very depressing. But the last thing you want to do is lose every flippin' one of them because you couldn't let go. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
So USKO was saying ATV is less safe. I think we're talking, if you're taking that out of context, we're talking about vehicles that can transfer humans to and from the space station. That would be the point of doing all of this.
Right.
Having any cargo-only vehicle is kind of, it's cargo only. You're not putting humans on a cargo only as lifeboat. So we're stuck with Soyuz for now. But there are other vehicles. Sierra Nevada is working on essentially a small space shuttle. It looks pretty cool, and they're getting pretty far along with that. SpaceX is working on human rating Dragon. Boeing CST-100. They're building the Orion capsule that will be human rated. So we have many different options that we will be able to put up there soon. But the best option continues to be the Soyuz capsule, and that's what we've got there now. It is a far better, in my opinion, it is a far better capsule or option than trying to keep a space shuttle up there. That's just not a good, it's not a safe idea, it's not a good idea, it's a very expensive idea. I see no pros to that.
The interesting thing, if I may, is that one of the other underlying threads between these two comments is that both parties said something along the lines of, I'm not sure how comfortable I am with other countries handling our American astronauts. And I thought that was a really interesting way of putting it. Of like, wait, why can't we just use our old stuff? Because I really kind of don't like other people touching my things.
Yeah, which is funny because when you consider that the space station is U.S., Russia, and all these conglomerates. It's an international space station floating around in the air.
Floating around in the air.
Actually, we have made a decision. We're going to do a show up there. But there are entire Russian segments on the space station, and if those Russian segments fail, it's not like just the Russian segment fails.
Yeah, no.
It's taking the space station with it.
All
By the
going
way,
down.
if the American segments fail and you have a loss of pressure, yeah, that's not a good thing either. So at that point, I don't think it matters who has the lifeboat up there.
Right.
Choose the best lifeboat, and the best lifeboat today is the Soyuz. Maybe that will change in the future. And hopefully it will change, not because it's Russia, but because I would love to see some next generation space tech up there. Let's get rid of this old stuff.
Cooler, awesomer. I don't care who makes it at this point.
Just somebody, right? Give me some cool space tech up there. I would love another space plane. I'm excited for Sierra Nevada.
Totes.
Whether you love winged spaceships or not, I think it's going to be cool, and I think that love of the space shuttle will be partly reborn in that. Obviously, it's much smaller and blah, blah, blah. Anyhow.
Buy a Lego model.
All right, so that's our show. We'd love to know what you think. Leave your comments on Facebook. By the way to suck at leaving comments on Facebook and Google, guys. You're free to use YouTube. You can use whatever you want. But this last episode, I'm yelling at everyone.
Berating
I am. I'm mad at all of you. No, we only had like 30 comments on the last show. And usually we have closer to 100. Maybe.
Well, obviously we're doing a good job at answering everyone's questions on air.
Maybe we were boring, but come on. I know you guys like to berate me more than that. So yeah, leave us your comments. Leave them in the wiki, on Facebook, on Google. Did you know that Spacevidcast has a Google Plus page?
Well, I did.
I did too. Just go. Unfortunately, it's not google.com/plus/Spacevidcast. It's some long convoluted URI. But yeah, just search for Spacevidcast in Google Plus, and we'll post the latest episode there and comment on it. Have fun. And also, if you'd like to see the After Dark show or exclusive content, gigs and gigs and gigs of exclusive content, sign up for Spacevidcast Epic. You can do that at spacevidcast.com/epic. It's about $10 a month if you go for the monthly option, and that gives you access to our entire library of stuff. But more importantly, it really helps us continue to produce the show, right? We're trying to save up and get some new gear. It helps us do some of those cool events like MSL Landing, so we can suddenly just run out and do some of those live events. And every subscriber helps. So spacevidcast.com/epic. Sign up and get access to the exclusive content, and then it helps us produce the show.
I'm just going to warn you now, with how many gigs and gigs and gigs, or jigs and jigs and
gigabytes. 1.2 to 21 gigabytes.
You might need more than 1 month. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's just a fair warning.
More than a month. And we continually update it with new content. So that's our show for this week. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching, and we will see you. I'm totally not ready with the close. We will see you in a week.
You can do it.
Right here, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see Alpha Centauri A, that sun sitting in the lower left. Alpha Centauri B. But then you can see our sun in the picture. Our sun is actually bright enough. If you were standing on this Earth-like planet, you might be able to see it. It is a Goldilocks planet, as ArcDude has said in the chat room. But more to the point, there's actually this really amazing, if you go to that, again, that wiki that we were talking about, wiki.spacevidcast.com, and go into the discussion area for this particular post.
Wait. If I may back up just a quick second.
Yeah.
It's kind of a Goldilocks planet in that it's 1,200 degrees Celsius or 2,192 degrees Fahrenheit.
I thought it was a true Goldilocks,
little-
but clearly that is
It's a
not.
little warm for us to be there.
Yeah, that's not going to work for us.
It's
It's not quite a Goldilocks.
But
Yeah,
the
no, it's not a
big deal
Goldilocks planet.
is that as the wiki statement as you're about to read kind of points out is that it's a rare occasion when you have a star and you have planets orbiting that star and it's just like one dude hanging out.
Now, I'm going to let you guys read the, I'll scan this graphic so you don't have to watch me read, but if you go to, like again, wiki.spacevidcast.com, go to 5.16, go into discussion, and NeoSM posted, said, I wanted to point out why the have, and I didn't do it last week either. So for the link to the story, go to wiki.spacevidcast.com, and the direct one is going to be /en/5.16. That'll bring you straight to this show. And we're finding shiny objects on Mars. This is the first object that Curiosity rover found. And the next thing, and we thought, okay, well, oopsies, part of the rover fell off. That's no good. Then we found that, which is a random black arrow on Mars. I don't know what's...
Yeah, that was really weird, that arrow.
But you can see there's some more shiny stuff there. We've actually found a third shiny object on Mars as well.
Yeah, and part of the issue was that, again, we thought this was ourselves, essentially, and we did a little actual digging, not
Pun intended.
No, well, but we did some digging and then found more shiny
underneath
after we dug the hole and looked at ourselves and we're like, well, we didn't come apart, so it is not us. What is going on? So the first object we determined was us, but the more shiny we kept finding, the weirder it got.
I think they've actually, as I understand it, the first object we're going back and reanalyzing, going, maybe that wasn't us.
Copy that. Interesting.
But the new shiny is not us.
Right.
The new shiny is gone from Dragon the turbo pipe. Welcome to Spacevidcast, episode 516 for Saturday, October 20th, 2012. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is the beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented Carrie Ann Higginbotham. We'll be your hosts, as always. Let's go ahead and get started. There's a bunch of really awesome space news. I think we should start first with, I didn't build any of
That's hilarious.
the graphics. So
Good job.
All right, so
Here's this random picture.
Here's a random picture for
Super
you.
random picture.
Yeah, so I guess normally we build graphics with lower thirds that.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon.
One small step for man, one